The expression Reach Nechoach can be found a total of 8 times in the Tanakh, 3 in Sefer Shmot, as part of the Karbanot offered at the dedication and consecration of the Mishkan, once in Vayikra, and another 4 times in Sefer Yechezkel. The phrase is to be found a further 34 times, albeit in its chaser format, a missing vav, in Sefer Vayikra and Bamidbar. And while the chaser version is to be found 16 times in Sefer Vayikra, the Maleh version with the vav only once in Sefer Vayikra, the very first time it is used in that Sefer. With respect to the translation options for the statement Reach Nechoach LaHashem, the Gutnik, Hertz, and Art Scroll provide a literal translation for the phrase, a pleasant aroma, a pleasant fragrance, a sweet savor to God. Kaplan in the Living Torah has a similar translation, but links the LaHashem to an earlier stanza of the Pasuk, treating the Reach Nechoach as a standalone phrase, describing the Korban in general. For whom it is to be a Reach Nechoach is not addressed by Kaplan. Shimshon Raphael Hirsch moves away from these 4 translators and offers the following, that the Reach Nechoach is an expression of compliance LaHashem to God, which technically is more of a commentary than a translation. We will return to the Hirschian option shortly, but before doing so, a slight digression to look at the overall role of the Korban. The Gutnik Chumash in its Classic Questions segment raises the vexing and perennial issue as to what the reason, if any, is for the sacrifice of animals. The Gutnik Chumash paraphrases the position of the Ibn Ezra, who maintains that it is ludicrous to suggest that God has a need for animal sacrifice, as was the case of most primitive and pagan cultures, in which various items were offered to their deities on the assumption that the deity needed to be appeased by the various offerings. Rather, argues the Ibn Ezra, the significance of Korbanot is one that involves the mystical forces that provide the backbone to the Kabbalistic system. In the literature that we have received from the various Parshanim on the topic of Korbanot, there seems to be an intense tug of war between, on the one hand, what is perceived to be the position of the Rambam, who as a rationalist adopts the position that the Korbanot are somewhat of a necessary evil given by God to rid the Jewish people of idolatrous influences of the nations in which they lived. At the time when the Torah was given, the Jewish people dwelled amongst non-Jewish nations who worshipped various animals, and therefore God commanded the Jewish people to slaughter these animals that were the deities of their non-Jewish neighbors. This position of the Rambam regarding Korbanot has been telescoped into the modern era, impacting upon a core belief of present-day Orthodox Jewish thinking, the building of the third Beit HaMikdash, and the role of Korbanot, if at all, in that time period. The caveat of here is that the Rambam's words are recorded in Sefer Moreh Nebuchim, a document that was written to combat the outflow from Judaic practice in the days of the Rambam. And hence, then as today, animal sacrifice might have been an aspect of Judaism that did not sit comfortably with the thinking, committed Jew. Hence the apologetics. Utter nonsense, says the Ramban. The Torah states explicitly that the sacrifices are a Reach Nechoach LaHashem, and as such, there must be something more than merely to wean the Jewish people off idolatry. This tug of war, on the ideological level at least, has been carried through the centuries and finds itself surfacing in this modern day and age. And, I might suggest, is reflected in the translation options for the phrase Reach Nechoach LaHashem. It might be suggested that the Gutnik, Hertz, and Art Scroll have a bias towards the Ramban's position regarding Korbanot, adopting a literalist and faithful translation. However, we are to explain the concept of Reach Nechoach, while possibly the Kaplan and the Hirsch translations agreeing with the Ibn Ezra that God has no need for the sacrifice of animals, would lean slightly towards the Rambam's view in their translations, an appeasing fragrance, not necessarily to God, or a modern reinterpretation for the Reach Nechoach LaHashem, penned by Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. The offering of a korban is an expression of compliance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi's commentary to the phrase Reach Nechoach LaHashem is quite interesting, where Kaviyachol he places into the mouth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu the words Nachat Ruach Lefonai, that a korban is a pleasing aroma, fragrance, savor to me, which aligns itself with Gutnik, Hertz, and Art Scroll, and then goes on to explain what the Nachat Ruach is, not from the actual sacrifice of meat, but Sha'amarti, that I commanded, V'na'aseh Ritzoni, and my wishes were fulfilled, which seems to align itself with the Hirsch translation for Reach Nechoach LaHashem, that it is an expression of compliance to God. And with this introduction, we will be better prepared to approach the Sikha of the Rebbe, who takes a critical look at the commentary of Rashi to Vayikra 1:9, and specifically to the phrase Reach Nechoach LaHashem.